The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here. Dan Rylance, our normal co-host, is not here right now. Dan is traveling around the world. Not totally around the world, but to a lot of different countries. Today I think he's in Cyprus as we tape this. So he's not here, but he sends his well wishes. Who is here with me, though, is someone who's been on once before, Jessica Miller, who was here earlier this year, I think, talking to us about the Oshkosh-Inclusive park project. They were just kind of getting started at that point and very loosely organized, had made a little bit of an inroad with the city parks department and so forth. Since that time, they've had a lot more things happening, and so she's back tonight to talk about what's been going on and how you can get involved and so forth. And to help her do that is one of her co-managers of the project, if you will, Pam DeLapp. And so Pam is to my left and Jessica is to her left. And so we're here, and we're very happy to be here.
Thank you very much for having us on again.
Guys. Yeah, it's nice to have you back and nice to have you here for the first time. So anyway, in case people didn't maybe see the first show that you were on, Jessica, or maybe they've forgotten it or new to the area or whatever, let's kind of recap. What exactly is the Oshkosh-Inclusive Park Project? Let's start there.
Well, the Oshkosh-Inclusive Park Project is a group of individuals in the community that have come together wanting to build a park where everybody can come together, grow together, learn together, and just have fun regardless of their age or their ability. So as you said, we've been working with the Parks Department, Ray Maurer, directly to get this going and get this to our community and just really see this vision become a reality.
Okay. And so when we talk about a park where everybody can go, it's going to be designed, and we've got a kind of a prototype, not a prototype of a park, but we've got a picture diagram of a park, of what the image is going to hopefully look like when it's all done. And so we'll be putting that up in a little bit here. But this is a park that, while it's intended for everybody, it's designed specifically for people with needs of some kind. Is that the correct way to really put this?
Yeah, and we're definitely bringing a lot of attributes to the park that you normally don't see in a lot of our wonderful parks in the community. A lot more accessibility for people that have mobility issues, sensory needs, so on and so forth. So we are bringing a lot of those added attributes to the parks that we don't see, to create and foster that need to bring everybody together to play.
Okay. Well, if we can, maybe put this this diagram up on the screen, maybe you can just explain to folks what we're seeing here that is different, perhaps, from a regular park. And we don't have a laser light, which would be very helpful right about now. I'm kind of pointing with my pen, but of course no one can see that. But maybe start over on the left and move to the right. What kinds of things are we seeing here?
Well, the biggest thing that you're going to see is the entire surface is going to be a poured and placed rubber surfacing. It's going to be very, very accessible for wheelchairs, walkers, so on and so forth, versus the wood chips and gravel that many of our parks have. It's a smooth rubber surfacing, and that will be completely covering the surfacing. It's pictured here in a cream color just to show you, but it is going to be every square inch of the park, followed by a cement walkway on the outer edge, and then there's also going to be safety fencing around that, which is not pictured. The ramping is a double wide ramp throughout the entire play structure. So it's going to definitely allow those with mobility issues to get around and be able to get to those different play stations much more easily. There'll be docking stations where they can transfer out of their wheelchair for different locations, as well as a lot of equipment at ground level. As you can see, especially in the ship area, there's going to be a lot of activity going on underneath as well as on top. Some of the special structures that we're bringing that have not been seen in Oshkosh are going to be the sway fun, which is on the right-hand side. It kind of looks like a boat.
And it's called what?
It's called a sway fun.
Sway fun?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this allows, there's seating for children, and then there's also an area, you can pick, there's pictured there, a little girl in a wheelchair. They can actually roll their wheelchair right into this structure, and it creates a sway similar to a swing. So that's going to allow children to come together and play. There's a couple other things. Trying to look here. The bucket seats with the harness attached on the swings. There's also on teeter-totter and bouncy type structures, there'll be backing or some more support than what we see in some of our structures. There'll be the Cozy Dome is a new structure. It allows children to kind of get away and have that quiet space if needed.
Cozy Dome, is that what I see? It looks
It's
like a little
cream
igloo?
colored, yes.
Way
yes.
over, it looks like I don't want to paint a picture, but it looks like the little dog houses that you find like at Menards or Fleet Farm or someplace like that. It's a little igloo looking thing way over on the left-hand side there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are just
like
a couple attributes. I'm excited to play on them myself.
All right. Good. Okay, so this is really much further advanced than because you didn't even have this when you were here the last time.
We had
an idea,
colored pencil
head.
drawing when we spoke last time.
Yeah.
And on top of this, I just wanted to mention this is kind of stage one, the playground structure, but we're also going to have accessible picnic area where there's going to be paths right up to picnic tables, a walking area, walking trail with landscape, and then hopefully our last stage will be a accessible fishing area as well, branched off in the park.
Okay, fishing area, obviously you need water for that.
Yes.
You've got a location of where this is going to be. Where's that going to be?
We do. Abe Rockland Park,
Okay,
right on the corner of Sawyer Street and Oshkosh Ave.
okay.
Typically people say the Smokestack Park.
Yeah, because years and years ago, see, I don't know if you guys are from here originally. I'm a townie.
Yep. Nope.
And years and years ago, wasn't it Pluswood or Plywood or somebody who was
Pluswood.
in there?
Yep.
And of course, the factory's long gone, but the smokestack, as you said, is still there. So,
Correct.
yeah, okay, so that's where it's going to be. And like, what kind of a target date do you have for this? How much money is needed to get this thing rolling?
So you take that over. She's our financial guru.
The project in total is about $485,000.
Okay.
When we presented to the park, they surprised us with saying, we're going to give you $80,000 towards renovating the current shelter that's there, and then they're going to give us $100,000 as long as we match the $100,000. So our job is to raise $305,000. And once we reach the first $100,000, we'll be able to break ground on the playground itself. So, and we're hoping that the shelter itself is going to start late this fall, over the winter, and then we're hoping early spring they'll be able to go ahead and start on the structure.
Okay. Now, something else that I was just noticing in this little handout that you had here, and I don't think that you guys had this set up before. If you did, I apologize, I don't remember. But people can donate to this through the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation.
Absolutely.
And and I'm assuming that they can do that by way of PayPal or a credit card by going to the Community Foundation's website?
Yes.
Okay, or they can just mail it and maybe put a note with it or in the memo section of their check that it's for the All-Inclusive project?
That's right.
Okay, the
exactly.
All-Inclusive Park project. Okay, so how obviously this was received well by the Community Foundation. How did you and when did you approach them about this?
Well, we approached them early on into our organizing. Pam, I would probably answer this question a little better than me.
We went to them probably late last summer,
Yeah.
and talked to them about our program, and they were very supportive of the program. So they helped us get organized and get our fund started. The Oshkosh Area Community Foundation is very, very supportive of this program. I think they needed to see us get going on it.
Right.
And so we'll be visiting them again when the grant season starts again.
Right.
But yep, they are absolutely supportive.
Well, this is exciting, I think, just in and of itself, and I'll tell you why. Because number one, not that any project doesn't have legitimacy if they're not having funds that are being donated through the Community Foundation, but I think it gives a little bit more credibility. It seems like a little more of a reality when someone like the Community Foundation gets on board with it.
No,
and so
definitely.
that is really to your credit, I think. And I think that will probably help with the fundraising as well.
Well, I think too that they understand that this isn't just another park. It's not, we didn't go to them saying, we need a park for kids with disabilities.
Right.
We're creating an environment that Oshkosh does not have right now. If you think about our daycares and our parks, there's not one out there that is fully inclusive of kids with disabilities. Somebody in a wheelchair is literally sitting on the sidelines watching while their kids are getting up on top of structures because they can't. You know, we have ramps on some of our structures, but they have wood chips underneath the structure or sand. The park that we're creating isn't just about kids. It's about that intergenerational play. How many of us have grandkids that want to go to the park with our kids? But as our senior population ages, they have mobility issues, stability, the sand, the wood chips. It's tough for seniors to go out and safely interact. So it's not just about the kids we're thinking about. It's all of those the bigger picture things that we're creating when we put a park like this together.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's a really wonderful idea. Where did the idea originally come from? Because I know in doing research for this, for the last time when you were on, Dan and I found a lot of these kinds of parks all over the country. I mean, it's not a new concept, even though it's very new and exciting for Oshkosh.
Correct.
So where did the idea come from?
This is the question I need to nail down a good answer for, I guess. It's really an idea that started just an idea I started, wanting to bring people together in our community and doing something for our community to bring them together. So I started researching, seeing, what I needed to do to make this happen. Honestly, didn't think it would go anywhere than an idea. Teamed up with Pam, who was a great support from the beginning. And next thing I knew, we were having a meeting like a couple weeks later with the Parks Department, and everything just kind of took off from there, really. But yeah, it started with an idea. I mean, it really did. And, now we're making it happen. So
Go ahead.
When Jessica came to me and talked to me about her idea, I have a child with disabilities. And so inclusion personally affects us. And so the idea that, our families, we have a big support network in Oshkosh, our Down to Earth group, has been going to the school board meetings and talking about the fact that we want our kids included in the regular classroom. It just doesn't benefit our kids, but it benefits all the kids in that classroom. And so when she came to me and I thought, you know, we're fighting for inclusion in our schools, but we need to have it in our community because the kids need to be able to learn in a natural environment about differences in others. We've created the Oshkosh Civility Project, and that whole thing is about inclusion, and being included, and diversity, and all of those things. If we don't start teaching our little ones in all of the environments that they're in, where are they going to learn that?
Right.
You know,
Right.
we're using our words to say we need to include kids. We need to show them in environments. Take the fear out of the differences and give them the information.
Yeah.
That child is just like you are. Even though they're in a wheelchair, they still like to play.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, so the idea, that inclusion idea, it isn't about what does an inclusive park look like. The bottom line is, what does an inclusive environment feel like for everybody there? Do they feel included or not?
Yeah.
I do want to talk about what it looks like, though, for a moment, since we have this beautiful drawing here. You know, who came up with how this was going to look? I mean, did you design this? Did you work with someone who designed it? Did you borrow the idea from someone?
We didn't borrow it. Anne from Landscape Structures came up from Milwaukee area, and she sat down with a group of our committee members, myself, Pam, Jennifer, and Jennifer Tabbert, Ginger Buke, and we just started looking at different structures, kind of got an idea of a theme we wanted to go with, being Oshkosh on the Water is our original theme, and designed it together, a collaboration basically from our committee, and then with the help of Anne from Landscape Structures, who put it all together.
On our committee, we have several of us that have children with disabilities. Jennifer has a child with physical disabilities, and Ginger has a physical disability. And so, you know, as we were looking at pieces, we were measuring out, we were thinking, okay, if I'm an adult and I have a typical child, but I have a disability as an adult, can I get onto the structure to play with my child? So, you know, we looked at the spaces around that. Is it, you know, we really thought about who are the users of this park, and we wanted to make sure all of those users were going to be able to get in and around,
Okay.
including seniors.
Now, I maybe this was just, you know, someone else because someone else from out of town put this together or whatever. I'm seeing there that it says Oshkosh-Inclusive Playground, and your website and materials says Oshkosh, you know, the Inclusive Park Project. So is there going to be something other than the playground elsewhere in the park, or is this the extent of for people with some kind of mobility issues or what have you?
No, as I mentioned before, we are also expanding with the picnic area, the walkway, and the fishing area as well. This is just the playground piece of it.
All right, okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to kind of make sure and clarify that. And in being able to get to like the fishing area and so forth, it will probably have some of these similar things like the brown walkway that's on the exterior there.
Yes.
Because how else are you going to get the wheelchair moving or what have you?
Exactly.
Or a lot of people have walkers, and you know, those walkers sometimes you see them with these little skis on them, but they always have wheels for the most part. And you know, that too doesn't move well on wood chips.
Yeah, and that's a great point to put up. It's not that we don't have wonderful picnic areas or, you know, trees to sit under to read a book or fishing areas, but it's getting to those places, you know, having that walk path, that cement path to get to those locations easily is what we're also bringing to the park.
Well, and I think that people, you know, we all, myself included, take mobility for granted. You know, Dan and I both, with not this year so much, but last year, we both had a knee replaced. And so for a good chunk of last year, Dan and I were trying to avoid kicking each other under the table with our good legs or bad legs, but also, you know, at times you're in wheelchairs, at other times you're using walkers or canes or what have you, and when you have to do that and use those kinds of pieces of equipment, whether it's for a short period of time, as it was for us, thankfully, or on a regular basis, you learn very quickly how important it is to be able to get around.
Sure.
You know, you just take things like that for granted. Even being able to get in and out of bed. This isn't a bed, of course, and you're not tackling those projects, but just getting in and out of a bed is challenging when you have mobility issues.
Well, and I think the conversations that we've had, we just came off of a weekend of a community event where we had hundreds of conversations about inclusion. And the conversations that we were having were things, talking to couples about just exactly that. If they want to go to the park, we have, like Menominee Park, all along Menominee, the water, there are these beautiful picnic areas. But they are, the picnic tables are on slabs, but they're up a hill on the grass.
Right.
You know, you can't get to them. And when we're having conversations like this with our Parks Department, and they're saying, boy, we never really quite thought of it quite like that before, you know that you're changing the way the future is going to look in some of our areas, and that's what we intended to do.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and you should be very proud of, you know, coming up with the idea and then moving it forward to this point. I think, and when you have something that someone can look at like this, you know, it makes it seem more real, and it puts it in, I think, greater perspective for someone who may have been listening to us talk about this the first time you were on, and just sitting there thinking, I think I get it, but I'm just not sure I do. Now it's very easy to get it.
And a lot of this project is just talking with people and educating them about inclusion and what it means to be inclusive. You know, Pam and I have talked to, like she said, we've had hundreds of conversations and just really educating, you know, the community as well.
Sure.
Not just, you know, bringing this play structure.
Sure.
So.
You were involved in ways to help raise funds and to make some inroads when it comes to awareness. You participated in the farmers market. Now, by the time this airs, the winter farmers market will be starting. Will you be participating in that as well?
There are talks about that. We haven't had anything committed yet. Right now, we, as Pam had mentioned, we just had a community awareness and education and huge event this past weekend to really kick things off. Last year when we were at the farmers market and so on and so forth, it was telling people about our idea, and now we're at the point where this is going to happen. So having larger scale events like we did this past weekend, we have a couple other ideas coming up in the next few months, possibly another larger event in January, February area, and then in the spring again. So it's not ruled out. There's talk about the winter farmers market, but there's a lot of different directions.
Sure. Well, there's so many ways that this can go, and there's so many different things that you can do. You know, and there's only so many people, and there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
we actually have, since our event, we've had people contact us to hear more about it. The university is interested in doing a story, and so we've had a couple of different media sources contacting us. But our focus now over the next couple of months is really going to have conversations with our local businesses, foundations, to find out about funding the park. We've already had a couple very successful meetings. So over the next few months, that's going to be our focus.
Do you know right now where you're at on a fundraising basis?
Well, after our event, are you asking us how much we've raised?
Yes.
Okay. After our event, we have about $10,000 in our fund.
Okay. And that's the fund that's at the community foundation? Okay. All right. So you've got a ways to go.
We do.
But that's even more reason, I think, for people to get involved. And speaking of getting involved, they can get involved by donating. How else can they get involved?
Well, they can definitely get involved by just helping support the project, whether it's on our website or Facebook, spreading the news and the awareness of inclusion. Obviously, different events that we have, they can come out and support us that way. And we may be having some events that we need volunteers for. So definitely volunteers. This past event, we had about 100 volunteers come out and help us, and we couldn't have done it without them. So there's going to be definitely some upcoming places where they can volunteer as well.
Well, and we've been, you mentioned that you're on Facebook, and so you would just go to Facebook and look for them there. But they've also got a website, which I hope we've been putting that up during the course of this segment. But it is Oshkosh-Inclusive Parkproject.com. I know that's a mouthful, but I'm sorry, it's Oshkosh-Inclusive Park.com. Not Park Project, just Oshkosh-Inclusive.com.
We shortened it a little bit.
Yes. Well, actually, you shortened it a lot, because I know before it was, one of these obscure website addresses, and oh my God, I had trouble just typing it, much less.
We now have our own domain.
Much less fitting it on the screen.
Yes.
The last time. So let me take a look here at any other questions that I may have had that we didn't cover. I guess I want to stress again, how important it is for anyone. Obviously, if someone has a family member, whether it be a child or an adult, who has cognitive issues, mobility issues, any type of anything that someone might think is a handicap per se. Not that it has to be a handicap, but if you can't get around, that's a handicap for sure.
Sure.
Sure. And so anyone, whether they have a family member who's challenged in some way or not, they still might want to get involved, because you can be easily challenged with mobility issues or whatever, even just after a surgery. And if you're someone who likes to go to the park and not necessarily play on playground equipment, but just hang out at a park where you can get to, point A and point B, but suddenly you're walking around with a walker following a surgery, this is the kind of thing that people should be thinking about and concerned with. What other points, we're down to like the last minute and a half here, what other points would you like people to know about this project?
I think our ultimate goal is that we want to teach kids in a natural learning environment about empathy, kindness, diversity. These are natural benefits that come when you bring kids together. When I was a child and growing up in school, I didn't know there was kids with disabilities in my school because I never saw them. And I think that every conversation I've had with people that are my age or older can say the same. We're changing that environment, and we're giving the information to our youngsters, because those kids at some point in the future are going to be employers, and they're going to see the value of somebody with a disability and understand they might be in a wheelchair, but boy, they have a brain that can run my business.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. This is a long-term investment our community is making that will pay off.
Excellent. And that's a great point to end with. So
definitely.
just sit tight. Thank you both very much for being here. We're going to take a very short break. And again, if you'd like to get involved with the project, please visit their website or their Facebook page. There's lots of good information there, including finding out how to get involved. And if you want to make a donation, that's more than welcome as well. And you can either contact them on how to do that, or you can go right to the Community Foundation's website and make a donation that way, or you can mail it to them. Anyway, thank you again. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Joe Ferlo from the Grand Opera House will be here. We'll be right back.
the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
And welcome back to Eye on Oshkosh. And Joe Ferlo is here now from the Grand Opera House, and we're going to be talking about their upcoming season and what's cooking at the Grand. The first thing, though, you wanted to talk about, and I had mentioned to you about this article that I saw back in, I think it was back in early October. I saw this article in the newspaper on, how the city hasn't really stepped full up to its promise or its commitment of donations to the Grand for its renovations and so forth. And in talking to you about that, you said that wasn't quite the entire picture, and you wanted a chance to kind of clarify that.
Sure, thanks. It's interesting. What you meant to say, though, is that the article gave the implication that the foundation was not stepping up to its obligation. You said the city.
Okay.
And I want to be real clear about that.
Yes, thank you for
and
that.
It
was some time ago.
Yeah. You and I both each been doing this for a long time, and you know how these stories sometimes can change their way, can change with the addition or omission of a word or two. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, as this report came out, this story came out, the obligation, the pledge that the foundation made during the highlight of the Stand with the Grand movement was not quite what showed up in the article, in the release. I don't want to get it wrong on your show, so I actually brought the pledge letter with me because I wanted to make sure I got it right. And there's a lot of stuff about all the work we did. Remember, this is the highlight, the height of everything. But the important statement here was that the Oshkosh Opera House Foundation has voted to commit to contributing up to $250,000 to the repair project. Funds will be raised in the form of a service fee on ticket sales for the amount collected, commencing with the 2010-11 season, or through private contributions, or a combination of both, until such amount is raised, or for a period of 10 years, whichever is sooner, and as long as the city retains a lease with the Oshkosh Opera House Foundation. Unfortunately, as this document was not in front of whoever it needed to be in front of, and the words "up to" were eliminated.
And those are very important words.
They're very important words.
Yeah.
And what surprised me, and agree, disagree, that's neither here nor there. But for me, the story was that the foundation has done exactly what we said we would do. Mm-hmm. We started a fund to make sure that the donations given for this purpose were segregated so that they could go towards this purpose. That's been done. We said we'd create a ticket service fee on events, and that at the end of each year, starting with 2010-11, we would turn that ticket service fee over to the city. Yep. We've done that for 2 years. We just very quietly wrote a check and let it go with that. Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunate it happened. I mean, the story is that the foundation has done exactly what they said we'd do, and that's not nearly as interesting.
Yeah. Well, and, as we have talked about in the past, I'm sure that there was no no ill intended in the article.
I don't think that at all.
It's just, I think sometimes, I don't know, people aren't either looking at all the information or they're having to work within such fast turnaround times to meet
Exactly.
deadlines
These
that
are
something gets missed.
These are both
know?
the reporter who reported and the person who followed up with a blog post. They're good journalists. They meant well. I don't think there's any ill will, and both of those news media outlets are very supportive of the Grand. So that stuff just happens. It's unfortunate because when it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think there was any ill
No.
will intended, nor is there any taken. We just
Yeah.
want to make sure we get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
And make sure that, because it was so important, the spirit of this thing, just going back and remembering for me, and obviously I was at the middle of all of this thing, was that we were going through this funding or non-funding controversy, if you would, or certainly conundrum.
Yeah.
And these people came up out of nowhere and started collecting nickels and dimes and quarters and dollars, and in some cases writing checks. And the community support groundswell was so heartening that the foundation said, okay, we should go back and do something. Let's put something at the table. What about a ticket service fee? And so it was the community support that led to this, that led to the whole episode at City Hall, which, if it had a soundtrack, would have made a great movie. And what I don't want to lose in this was one of the great things I recall from this whole process was the civility in which it took place. Not everybody was in favor of it. Not everyone's in favor of it today. I'd be naive and really bad at what I do if I thought that everybody needed to support this project and had to along the way. There's no project like that.
Right, right.
But whether they were pro or con, that day, people got up, they spoke civilly, with civility.
Yes,
And,
either way is correct.
And we agreed to disagree. The council had a tough decision to make. They made it. I thought it was the right decision. Not everyone's going to agree with that. But moving forward, all we can do is what we said we would do. And in that case, we have, and I appreciate the opportunity to just kind of say that.
Well, and thank you for clarifying it for us. I want to talk about this ticket service fee for a moment, because it's something that anyone who goes to any performances or concerts, for the most part, has to pay.
That's right.
The only place that I haven't really seen people paying it is at our amphitheater. And, you know, I have advocated for that for years. For some reason, our city council just will not put it in place. But can you tell us, you know, how much your fee is that's added onto your tickets?
At the moment, it's $1.
Yeah,
and it's
has
built-
it affected your attendance at all?
No, because it's built into the tickets.
Right.
We've made a choice early on. Our ticketing, I mean, this all goes back to the online Ticketmaster things of years ago. I just never wanted, and this precedes me at the Grand, and it came with me from other theaters that I've worked at. I've always preferred for the ticket price that's advertised to be all-inclusive. I don't want to add sales tax. I don't want to add service fees. I don't want to add box office fees. It's all part of the ticket. And everyone who rents the Grand, when they sign an agreement for the Grand, agrees that the ticket price that's advertised will be the ticket price. And that although sales tax is included and paid on every ticket, and although a service fee is paid on every ticket, the net $25 or whatever ticket to the audience, what they see is what they pay. So in that sense, it hasn't been. Our challenge is we're just getting back into the market. You know, you close a business for a year and a half, and you got to find your way back into the market. But I don't think it's a result of the ticket service fee. Particularly in this case, I think people thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And what it does for me, for any organization, is you are then creating a user-based income stream to go towards whatever the purpose is. In the theater I ran in Manitowoc, which was not a city entity, the service fee went to a restoration fund. And that happens at Pabst, and I don't know if it happens at other places, but a lot of historic theaters will do that. Maybe after 10 years is over, that's what we'll do with Grand. Maybe we'll create an opportunity to do other enhancements to the. It's hard to say what'll happen, but from where I sit, I think it's effective. It certainly was an effective way for us to say, not only are we the foundation going to participate, but the individuals who use the grant will participate. I should point out, I mean, I really do think that the users of the grant are actually proud to be contributing.
Sure.
I think the high schools, I mean, when you go to see the high school shows at the grant, that dollar's in there. And all those parents who are supporting those kids and those kids who are doing their shows on the stage are part of this whole process. And I think it's a great source of pride and inclusion. And so I can't speak to the specific issue that you mentioned because of course,
nor do I want you to.
But I do think in our case and in my experience, it is an effective way to create a separate fund independent, because we all know that ticket sales, they're not paying the bills, they're paying for the show.
Right.
You know, and so when you add this on, at least then you're able to say, look, when you come to see show X, you are making that show successful, and we're making a contribution towards this agreed amount that we're gonna put towards this renovation over 10 years.
Yeah, and that's really all it does. It helps to take care of the building in some type of perpetuity, if you will. You know, I mean, it's no different than someone who lives in a condo and they're paying homeowners association dues. Well, some of those dues are going to pay for property management and lawn care and so forth. But another part of those dues each month are going into a reserve fund to cover the roof if it wears out, or, you know, the parking lot that needs to be resurfaced, or whatever the case may be. It's for future, you know, renovations, repairs, what have you.
Exactly.
And that's the way to look at it. And if you don't do something like that, then you're forced to have to come with your hand out, both hands out, and probably then some, when there's something that needs to be done.
And I think one of the most important things too, from at the user end of things, people don't want to do. I know I don't. When I buy a ticket, I don't want, if I'm buying a $25 ticket, I don't want it to be $25 plus $1 plus the $4.50 service fee plus sales tax. If the ticket is $25, the ticket is $25. And by building it all into our ticket prices, I think from a management point, that just makes it cleaner. It makes it easier for the customer to accept that this is part of what they're doing.
Sure.
Because they know it's all in there.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. So, you know, let's talk, before we talk about the upcoming season, let's talk about finances in a little bit greater depth. I don't know if you remember this, but when you and I first had a conversation, it was on the phone, and it was for an article that I was doing on performing arts centers, just in general. And I forget even what the publication was that I was writing for, but I talked to you and I talked to people from the Performing Arts Center in Appleton and up in Green Bay and what have you. And, the challenge then, of course, the biggest challenge was being able to get quality shows with the kind of budget that you have and to keep things running. And I would have to assume that is probably still the greatest challenge that you and other directors of performing arts centers have.
It is, but an interesting thing has happened over the years, I think, since we first had that conversation. And that's that as time goes on, the artists themselves get it. They understand. And sometimes it gets lost in getting the communication to the artist. But I've found that, and it comes with experience, and it comes with knowing agents, and it comes with knowing artists, it comes with years. But when I'm able to actually have a conversation with an artist, good things happen. Because they get it. They understand the challenge. When we reopened and Jeff Daniels came back and opened the theater for us, people said, and continue to say, how'd you get Jeff Daniels to come for what we can afford? The answer is because I got the word to Jeff Daniels. I had an agent who was willing to take the message that this is what we could afford. If you can't do it, I understand. But we won't be paying this amount. We can't do it. And the dialogue itself has gotten better over the years. Maybe it's the way I present it. Maybe it's, I like to think that the climate has actually gotten more collaborative. And there are times, let's face it, I still go to the table and say, this is what I can afford. And they say, well, this is what we need. Then you have to be able to say, well, bye-bye. You should take the offer from theater. Why? Because we can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't raise that ticket price to cover that. It would be irresponsible of me.
Yeah.
But the dialogue has gotten better. That said, of course, it's still a challenge. It really is. And when we operate in the shadow of a big box theater with more resources, although they have the same challenges we do, it's just on a larger scale, it's difficult. You don't have the opportunity in the average conversation to go through the math and say, well, I have 600 seats for one performance, whereas for a musical, it's 2,000 seats over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, of course I can give away more tickets for advertising, and I can do more things than I can do here. So I have to be more careful in what I do with my inventory of availability. That's a hard conversation to have with people who say, well, why can't you bring so-and-so? So the easier conversation is to say, well, if I did, the tickets would be $500.
Would you like to pay that?
Well, it's more than that, because I've had this conversation at a gas pump many times.
Yeah.
It's why don't you bring, let's say, Reba McEntire? Why not? Why don't you bring Reba McEntire to the Grand? And I'll say, well, if I do the math, it's $1,000 a ticket. And they'll say, I'd pay that. And I'd say, great. Got 500 friends? Because it's not just one. We all have a ticket. We all have someone in our mind for whom we'd pay almost anything to go see them up close and personal. The key for me is I have to find the critical mass of a break-even crowd to do that. And I can, I've often told our board or when I'm doing workshops for smaller theaters, you can find 200 people to see almost anything. You can find 200 people who are passionate about any one thing. But to find 400 people on a regular basis who are passionate about that one thing, that's where the challenge is.
Yeah.
And that's where the math comes into play. And that's one of the reasons why Grand Season is so eclectic. My goal has never been to get you or I or anyone else to say, I'm going to go see 11 shows. My goal has always been to say, I can find 5 shows and get a discount. Those are the 5 I want. And your 5 are going to be different from my 5. They're going to be different from someone else's 5. And that's the formula. And for better or for worse, it's the formula that we need in order to stay viable.
Yeah. Let me ask this, and if you don't know the answer to this, Joe,
Make it up?
No problem, just forget it. But it's just something that, I've been thinking about as you were talking about artists and things like that, and not so much musical artists, but, you can't turn on a TV network these days without seeing reality show after reality show after reality show. Now, while they might provide some, guilty pleasures and some passions for a few people here and there, obviously more than a few, but, they're also taking away, I think, or shoving out of the picture a lot of good quality programming where actors and actresses and writers have earned their living doing their craft. And suddenly you've got, reality shows and regular programming here. So are you finding, given that, in the circles that you travel in, more artists who are having to turn to this kind of theater as opposed to performing in television shows and so forth?
I don't have an answer, but I do have some observations.
Sure.
I think you're right on, and I don't remember what year it was, but that writer's strike that knocked TV off and started Survivor way back when, and started this whole reality show thing, was the most damaging strike ever. Not that I'm pro or against action like that, but the fact is it changed television apparently forever. And the idea that you can become a star on reality TV isn't going to go away.
Make a lot of money doing it too.
Not in this day and age where YouTube videos spur popularity.
Yeah.
It's just it is a reality of our life. I do think it's affected people. I think, compared to 10 years, 15 years ago, you'll see more people doing television commercials than you ever saw before. Who would have thought that John Stamos would be selling yogurt?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And a lot more voice work.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
noticed that.
So I do
more voice
think
work.
people are finding other ways to make a living. And maybe that trickle down from that is why artists are so more willing to have conversations about working in organizations like ours. Ultimately, I suppose it's good for the live performance venues that the reality TV is taking over. The problem is people want to stay home and watch the reality TV, and that's where we really get into trouble with it. But I do think you're right. I think that I think it's harder to get work. I think the agents have to work harder to find work for their people, and as a result, one of two things happens: either people are solvent enough in their lives that they're retiring early. I'm talking about personalities and artists, or they're working more than they ever have before. And I'll get in a conversation with an agent, and they'll say, "Oh no, he really wants to work these old historic theaters." And I'm like, "Well, of course he does. He wants the key words in that sentence are he really wants to work." Yeah. But the issue when it comes to me is how badly does that person want to work, because it takes X dollars. There are still people who will say, "This is my line in the sand. They won't work for less than X." Well, I don't have X. Yeah. That said, this season that's coming up right now, I mean, there are several artists in this season that I had that exact conversation with, and then I do crazy things like show them pictures of the hall or pictures of the kids standing with the grand banners, and you'd be surprised people get grabbed by that idea. Or a few years ago, we had Frank Ferrante, an artist who did a Groucho Marx impersonation. He's the best Groucho Marx tribute artist in the country. New York Times has said it. But Frank, when I had a chance to talk right with Frank, I said, Groucho played our stage. And he's like, really? So we had Groucho Marx, and then 100 years later, we had Frank Ferrante playing Groucho Marx. And Frank uses that story, and then he goes around to the country looking for places where Groucho played. So that he could say, I did this too, because he's friends with the Marx family. Okay. So it's fun for him to be able to talk to Groucho's, daughter, who's I think still around, Miriam, or grandson, and say, I just played such and such, and Groucho played there in 1908, or whatever the story is. So it's spurred more conversation. That said, I think still I've often used to say that there's a inverse proportion. The harder, the farther gone from stardom an artist is, the worse their demands are. Yeah. Which I always thought was interesting. One of the easiest artists I worked with my entire career was Charlton Heston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he got it. He knew where his fans were. He knew what paid his bills. He was the easiest artist I ever worked with. Yeah. And conversely, some of the most difficult people I worked with are people you go, really, is that person still out there?
Well, you mentioned your upcoming season. Let's talk about what you've got coming up.
Well, the holiday season is going to be fun, because one of my favorite acts in the holiday season is one that is the most intergenerational act I've done in a long time, and that's Mallory Lewis, Sherry Lewis's daughter, and Lamb Chop, the most famous sock puppet in the world.
It's true.
Mally used to produce actually Lamb Chop's Play Along, the last of Sherry's shows on TV, and then after Sherry passed away, Mallory kind of looked at Lamb Chop sitting there, and she had never done the act, she'd never done the voices, she'd never done the work, and decided Lamb Chop couldn't go away. So she picked up Lamb Chop and she started to do the work. I'll be honest with you, it took 2 or 3 years before I booked Lamb Chop, because I was pretty skeptical. I mean, I'm of the generation that remembers Lamb Chop. My kids are of the generation that remembers Lamb Chop. So I knew there was a high bar there, and yet I went to a conference and Mal was in a booth, and I was having this conversation with Mallory and Lamb Chop, and every time I talked to Lamb Chop, I'd turn and I was talking to Lamb Chop, and I thought, son of a gun, she's got me, and we were as close as we were, and then I knew, and she's one of those artists. She's coming, she's doing a show, she's doing an event for our high-level donors. I'm going to do an actor's studio interview with Lamb Chop for our Producers Circle group. She's doing some promo work for us. She's bringing her lamb chop collection, Sherry's lamb chop collection, for Gallery Walk the week before. This is an artist who gets it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the highlights. I saw you nodding over my shoulder, so I know we got to.
Yeah, we got about 2.5 minutes.
So, but Mallory Lewis is there, and then we talk about being eclectic. Let's just stick with the holiday season. We go from Mallory Lewis and lamb chop to the Second City comedy troupe out of Chicago and their Dysfunctional Holiday Review. The fabulous show that makes fun of virtually every holiday tradition, no matter what your holiday traditions are. It's the only show that comes with a disclaimer. It's PG-13 because it's improv and occasionally a word comes out once in a while.
Yeah.
So we go from this to that, and then in between, obviously people can go to the website. I know we're pressed for time. GrandOperaHouse.org. The Facebook site.
We've been putting it up.
Has places to go as well with lots of pictures. We also are the home for the symphony and for the community players, and they're both part of our season. And for the first time last year, in any theater in Wisconsin, you could buy grand shows or symphony shows or community players shows or any combination and receive a discount if you bought 5 or more shows. So it's a combined season with a combined season ticket. And all you have to do is mix and match at will. So if you're a snowbird and you only can come to the shows at the beginning or the end of the season, you can mix and match among the symphony concerts, the community player shows, and the booked touring shows at the Grand. So
you've also got something coming up here. It's not necessarily at the Grand, but there is something coming up on December 31st for New Year's Eve.
It's a big fundraiser for the symphony. It's the second year they've done it. This one's called Bright Lights Event City. It's got kind of a special Sinatra-esque kind of flavor to it. Some dancing, some light classical music, a fun night at the convention center. But of course, the tickets are available through the box office at the Grand. So it's a part of that ongoing partnership with the symphony. Even when they're performing off-site, we're trying to support them by selling the tickets through the box office. So that's a big deal too. And of course, if we're talking year-end, I would be lax in my job if I didn't point out that's a great time to donate. And we'd be happy to take that and apply it, whether it's to these events, the educational programs. We still are bringing 10,000 school kids through Grand every year for school shows, school matinees, and we're very proud of that as well. That
is unbelievable. All right. Just in our last 30 seconds or so, Joe, what has been the response from folks about the renovations that you've done?
People are thrilled. I mean, I was very bold and brash when we closed, and I said we'd fix it up as good or better. And with the support of the city, frankly, and the contractors who actually let me have a lot more say probably than I deserved, it is. The artwork is improved. The color palette of the restored ceiling is more in tune with the original. And then the Grand Lounge, which was privately funded but done at the same time, has been a revelation and it continues to grow as an income source. It now does cabaret shows on its own.
Wow.
We're doing private parties there. We're serving a limited menu after the show. People can go to the show and stick around afterwards for either dessert or a beverage, a Wisconsin beverage as I call it.
Yeah.
Or they can order a pizza and they
Excellent.
can stick around for a while. So there's as people become more and more aware of just the depth of what that has happened and how a night at the Grand doesn't have to end with the curtain, it becomes even more popular, and we're finding more varied use of the complex than we ever have before.
Sure. So if you haven't been to the Grand in a while, you better go, because it's probably like nothing you've really experienced before. So anyway, thanks so much, Joe, for being here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
It is for me as well, and our time always goes by so fast.
Thanks.
So anyway, thank you, and good luck with the upcoming season. That's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
Thank you.